Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadale Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tada Bhaktaya Namo Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. My Dandavat Pranam devotees. Hope everyone had a very wonderful Kartik Mass. And devotees who may have utilized the Thanksgiving holiday to come together to become appreciative of the glorious life in the process of bhakti and the ability to have association one to another. Yesterday my good wife has put on a seva that she's done for 27 years, which was to invite Vaishnavas to our temple home and to prepare prasadam and do kirtan and, be very thankful that we've come into this wonderful line of Shri Sachinandan Gaura Hari, whose complete mercy is bestowed on the jivas in this Danya Kali. Kali Yuga is normally an age of great degradation and suffering and so forth, but this is called Danya Kali because the highest spiritual achievement is being given by Shri Sachinandan Gaura Hari even in this dark age. Anarpita chirim chirat karunavati nakalo Sumutpaitam unata ujjvala rasa swabhakti sriyam. So the highest spiritual attainment for any jiva is the immaculate loving service to the lotus feet of Srimati Radharani. So that beautiful mood, which is called Palyadasi Bhava Manjari Bhav, is given by Sri Sachinandan Gaura Hari out of his causeless mercy when he descends in this Kali Yuga, which takes place once in a day of Brahma after the appearance of Sri Krishna Chandra. So we have so much to be thankful for and so much to be grateful for. And if anybody is very fortunate to come in this line and have the mercy to hear the katha given by our Purva Acharyas and our Vatmanacharyas on this wonderful teaching of Sri Sachinandan Gaura Hari, please consider yourself extremely, extremely, extremely fortunate. I have not done question and answer sessions on Facebook for quite a while. One is that they're only posted now for 30 days. Two, because I have resorted back to answering many devotees' questions personally if they send it to me by messenger, which is the preferred methodology. Because then I can speak the answers and it's much easier than me having to type out answers on a little screen or something like that. The title of this particular session was Short Answers to Long Questions, and that's because I just want to briefly go over a couple of questions that have been asked. Some have been asked previously, so it's like a sort of reiteration to some of those questions, and I don't want to drag out answers very long, and also because many of the questions deal with a central theme, which is Saranagati. Saranagati means Anukulyasya Sankalpa Pratikulyasya Vivajana. So every jiva who wants to come to the practice of bhakti has to come to the point of doing Saranagati, or being surrendered. Surrender starts in the heart with something called Prapati. Prapati means the desire that I want to surrender to the process of bhakti, especially at the lotus feet of Gurudev. Rupa Goswami Pad has mentioned Guru Padasraya, Tashmat Krishna Dikshari Shikshanam Vishrambena Guru Seva. So he's given this methodology to approach the lotus feet of Sri Guru in a mood of surrender. The first two elements of that surrender are to do what is favorable. Anukulyasya Sankalp, take a vow to do what is favorable, and Pratikulyasya Vivajanam, to avoid those things that are unfavorable. These are the only things that the jiva is capable of doing by their own power. So the next line in the verse describing Saranagati says, Rakshashiti Vishwash Goptrave Varanam Tata. That we should have a Vishwash. Vishwash means a conviction. I've mentioned before that part of this word Vishwash is swash. Swash means to breathe. The same conviction you have that I will take my next breath, which though you know it's not guaranteed, we have great faith that we'll take our next breath. We should have equal conviction that Sri Satchidananda Gaura Hari will both protect and maintain our desire to advance in bhakti. Staying in a humble mood, Atma Nikshepa Karapanya, staying in a very humble mood, Trenadapi Sunichena. Then to practice with this kind of mood, doing what is favorable and avoiding what is unfavorable, this is called Saranagati. And many of the questions can be answered by simply judging whether something is favorable or unfavorable to bhakti. So I want to go through the questions because I do have some services to do today. And one of them is to finish some writing, which I want to take advantage of this period of time that I'm not traveling to try to get some writing done. So the first question that someone asked, and I've paraphrased the questions to make them a little bit more concise because some of them were very expanded. The person asked a question about sex life and Krishna consciousness. And a part of that question was the hearing or reading of Ras Lila Katha. So one, sex life and Krishna consciousness is described as something that is favorable to the service of Guru, Krishna, and Vaishnavas. So Krishna has given, as mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, the impetus for sex life only for the process of procreation, which means the seva of being able to invite via the proper sanskar a soul to come into the womb of a Vaishnavi and to have the opportunity to develop their bhakti samskars, to continue their advancement in bhakti. So this is the real purpose of sex life. Krishna told in Bhagavad Gita, Dhamma virudeshu kamoshme bharta shava, that I am that sex life which is not contrary to religious principle. And the ultimate religious principle is anya abhilasita sunya jnana karmadya navritam, to do what is favorable or anukul for Krishna seva. So the first and foremost consideration about anything should be that. And again, it ties into Saranagati, what will be favorable and what will be unfavorable to bhakti. So we'll have to then use common sense to gauge if I want to engage in sex life. For one, it requires that I should be duly married, and in my duly dharmic married life, then I should exercise the activity of sexual activity for the purpose for which it was originally intended, which is to give souls an opportunity to enter into the arena of the material world with an ample opportunity to practice bhakti. So that is the standard of what is sex life in Krishna consciousness. Everyone has different bhakti samskars and also different karmic samskars. So according to their karmic samskars, kamana daivanana trena janto devapatye, there is a karmic portfolio that each person has, and in that karmic portfolio there are particular impressions. They're called praktanik or adunik. Praktanik means previous and adunik means those which are being created now, which may not allow a person to easily utilize sex life strictly for the purpose that it's meant for. So now, are we in a dilemma? Are we in a crisis mode? How do we adjust? What do we do? So then again, the application of what is favorable versus what is unfavorable. Obviously, unrestricted indulgence in sex life, which will bring one into a deeper sense of bodily consciousness and create deeper impressions around the material body, would not be favorable for developing a spiritual body to serve Krishna. And the path of bhakti is designed to create praktanic and adunik sanskars. Praktanic bhakti sanskars and adunik bhakti sanskars means impressions leading to a spiritual body. Right? So if we are constantly being absorbed in this body under the influence of the enjoyment of material sex life, it will become difficult to deepen our bhakti impressions and our continual movement towards developing our spiritual body or siddha deha or chit sharir, spiritual body. So obviously then again the weighing of the scale, what's favorable and what's unfavorable. Now if your material impressions do not allow you to become free from sex life, either via Vanapras life, Brahmachari life, sannyas life, if it is something that's also part of a profile of seva to Guru and seva to the Mahaprabhu's mission, right? Because these are the ashrams of celibacy. Then one should at least try to have regulated sex life, of course, obviously with the intention to have children. But even if that is not the case, still there should be some next level of regulation around sex life. There's no way around or no way to circumvent the need to practice sexual restriction. That's just part of the life in bhakti. I have seen that some devotees have been highly critical of that, considering it to be a repressive and oppressive sort of mentality that develops from having to follow such a strict ideal. But if it's understood what the compensation for that is, and we do very extreme sort of sacrifices to obtain material things that we desire. How hard people work throughout a career in education to get a good job, to make money, etc., etc. How hard do people work in order to become, develop some expertise in any given field, whether it's business, athletics, music, whatever it might be. An intense amount of practice, study, sacrifice goes into those things. So why we will feel that the highest compensation which is available, which is love of God, that there should be no sacrifice, or we should consider the sacrifice in pursuit of that ideal to be oppressive or repressive to our sensibilities or our consciousness. So a lot is the nature of the self-interest and selfishness that is a byproduct of dealing with the consciousness in the material world. Sometimes that we believe that somehow or another, though so many sacrifices could be made even for material so-called love in this world, we don't see the degree of sacrifice as being favorable to developing love for God. Many times I've told that the greatest love story ever told is the mercy and love that has been shown to us by the Lord. The Lord has accompanied us in the heart throughout our sojourn in the material world from Anadikal, time without any beginning. All the different bodies we've been through, all the different states of consciousness we've been through, the Lord has accompanied us as Antaryami, or the super soul. Excuse me. And even though we've never once turned towards God with a mood of service, with a mood of love and affection, God has still shown us unlimited love and affection. But now when we become slightly conscious of the need and have a slight desire to serve God, we become very critical of the methodology by which that is to be accomplished. So whereas we can find ample strength, power to make commitments around the material world, we find it difficult to make commitments around developing our spiritual love. So it segues into, I have heard that the reading of the Ras Lila helps one to control sex life. Of course, the Ras Lila Katha and the Ras Lila in general is not a sort of medicinal arrangement to deal with our sex psychology, but rather as a byproduct of the fact that the Ras Lila is a spiritual phenomenon which is the pinnacle of the loving exchange between Shri Radha and Krishna. Then the nature of the internal energy imbued in that Leela, if it is heard from the proper source, Vikridam Vrajavadu Biridam Cha Vishnu Sharanvito Anusunu Yadvana Yadyaha, if it is heard both with faith by the hearer from a person who has Paramattik Shraddha, means realize faith in the Ras Leela, and they themselves have some relation to savor in Ras Leela, having some realization of their own Swarup, hearing this Katha from them, being fully imbued with Swarup Shakti. It is mentioned in the third canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, Satam Prasangam Amavirya Samviro Bhavantirit Karana Rasunaya Katha. That when you hear from Satam means the sadhu, who themselves has some realization of bhakti, then their samvad means their harikatha has mama virya. Krishna says it has my shakti. So mama virya has been translated as sometimes my powerful and wonderful lila or activities. But the underlying purport here is that mama virya, virya means shakti or power. My shakti is imbued in that harikatha. Therefore, bhavanti rid. It illuminates the heart with the prabhav or influence of Swarup Shakti. The influence of that Swarup Shakti removes Dvidrogam, the disease of calm that's present in the heart of the jiva due to their association with mundane sex life from time without any beginning. So yes, hearing the Ras Leela certainly has the power to help remove the tendency for mundane sex life, if it is heard both with faith and from a person who has some realization. Reading Rasa Leela, not as much, because if the power in the heart of the person reading is not sufficient, then they may read Rasa Leela and it may even have ill effect, because Jiva Goswami Pad has mentioned, Kintu na rahasya leela purusha vikara indriyahi. If you read Rasa Leela on your own, and your material samskars rise up in your heart, if you read some intimacy of the Kam Krida, means the intimacy of Radha and Krishna's samprayog, means their meeting, and your own material impressions become synthesized with that, it will cause vikar. Purush vikara means the tendency for your own enjoyment in your senses. So Jiva Goswami has said, Kintu na rahasya leela. That kind of person should not hear the Ras Leela. He also mentions others whose rasa is not compatible with madhurya rasa. But here the point being those especially who become agitated because their material impressions will become synthesized with what they're reading, and it will stimulate their purush vikar, right? The tendency for material enjoyment. So they should not hear Ras Leela. But if you're hearing Ras Leela from the sadhu, again who has the influence of Swarup Shakti in that katha, then the power of Swarup Shakti, the prabhav of the internal spiritual energy, will displace the material influence in the heart. In Bhagavad Gita it's mentioned here, Raso Rajam Rasopiyasha Param Drisvan Vartate, by establishing the superiority of the taste in the idea of savor to Shri Radha Krishna Yugal, it will displace our own self-interest in our own enjoyment. This is one of the criteria for really understanding Srimad Bhagavatam, right? Because it's mentioned there, Nimatsaranam Satam, Paramo Nimatsaranam Satam, that Srimad Bhagavatam is meant for those persons who are free from near Matsarya. Matsarya here means, envy is a translation of Matsarya, but here Matsarya means self-interest. Because everyone's self-interest is the basis of envy. So the purport here is that one's hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam should be without any self-interest. And the only way for that to happen is if the superiority of the taste in Bhagavat Seva supersedes the material impressions coming from our previous material samskars and our current material samskars. Understand? So this is the criteria under which the Ras Leela Katha should be heard. Ras Leela means Rasanam Samahu Iti Rasa. So it means that Leela in which all rasa in a small a in Sanskrit means all the ingredients of rasa are present in the Leela called Ras Leela. Because that Leela contains the mood of Srimati Radhika, which is called Madanakya Mahabhav. This Madanakya Mahabhav is a supreme, enjoyable, relishable taste of the Ladini Vritti. Ladini Vritti means the pleasure potency inherent in spiritual life. that comes from Srimati Radhika, and Krishna tastes that mood in the Leela called Ras Leela. You understand? So one should be very, very, have great adar, means great respect and great shraddha, faith, especially faith in a sadhu. Then one should hear Ras Leela in that regard, and it will have the desired effect of helping to stave off the influence of mundane material sex life. Question number 2 was a devotee who was writing and was wondering, why does my practice seem like a ritual? They went on to say that they were previously a practitioner in Christianity, and now after some years in practicing bhakti, they're beginning to feel the same sort of settling into a routine of practice that doesn't really mean or have significance. I forgot how they couched it because I only paraphrased the question here. I think it was something like it's not carrying a certain kind of significance in their daily life that they feel like they're performing a ritual. Yes, Rupa Goswami Pad is warned about this. He calls it niyamagraha. Sometimes it's also called anustanic practice. Anustan means to do something daily as a practice, but not have an actual heart connection with it. The reason that it is very difficult to practice bhakti and have the reciprocal feelings coming from the practice is because there's practice without sambandha jnana. I've mentioned this several times on many classes. Sambandha jnana means that you have to have a relationship to the object of the practice, and then the practice is a relational dynamic between you and the object of love in the practice. So when you have a sambandha to Sriman Mahaprabhu and to Radha Krishna, and a sambandha means a relationship. So the obvious question would then be, well, what is the relationship? How do we get the relationship? Well, when you approach Sri Guru, Guru gives Harinam. In giving that Harinam, they've given the worshipful objective of their own heart to the disciple. The disciple, in the loving affection towards Guru, has taken that loving reciprocation from Guru in the form of the Nam avatar, the deity of Radha and Krishna in the form of their names. And when they receive that, they now create a relationship with that Nam. Prior to receiving the Diksha mantras, it's commonly called in ISKCON Society second initiation, prior to receiving that relationship with Nam is one of becoming purified to appreciate Nam. Jiva Goswami has written, Pratamam Nam Nam Shravanam Sura Antakaran Attarapeksham, that by chanting this Nam, then the Antakaran means the subtle body, which is the housing of all of our karma that's produced the gross material body, it starts to become purified. When the Antakaran means the mind, the intelligence, and the false egoism starts to become purified, then at the time of receiving the Diksha mantras from Sri Guru, then the impression coming from those mantras, which are also imbued with Swarup Shakti, allow the person who's receiving the mantra to create now a relationship with the personification of the names that were given. So, Radha and Krishna personified, now you're receiving a relationship to that very Radha and Krishna. Radha and Krishna have mercifully taken the form of the Archavigraha, the deity in the temple, to receive your seva, and they've mercifully taken the form of Nam avatar for your inner worship. You understand? So now what happens at the time of Diksha? Divya Jnanam Yanta Shimanti Mantre Bhagavat Surup Jnanam Tena Bhagavat Sambandha Visesh Kanangschar. Two things happen. One is the reception of what is called Divya Jnana, or a transcendental awareness of your particular relationship to Radha and Krishna, who are personified in that Nam. By receiving this and being Saranagat, then the relation that you have with Krishna, the Visesambandha Jnana, the specific relationship you have, becomes manifest in your heart. If you are not Saranagat at that time, it is like a seed, and then when the seed is watered by Harikatha, it gradually grows into that realization. That realization starts as an aspirational desire. Having heard the Harikatha of sadhus, especially my Guru Pada Padma, and having some understanding of the nature of my Guru Parapadma's own relationship with Radha and Krishna. I will now chant the Nam absorbed in a particular aspirational mood in relation to Radha and Krishna with the desire to have that as my perfection. You understand? So for instance, if your Gurudev has the mood of a Sakha or has the mood of a Manjari, then the inner practice that you do on a daily basis, because we have external practice in the form of worshipping Thakurji, doing different savas like cooking or doing book distribution or preaching or anything. These are kind of external savas until there's maturation in bhakti where you can synthesize it. It's all one internal process. But our internal practice is actually the chanting of Harinam. It's not an external practice. It's an internal practice geared towards Smaran. Smaran is a particular mood of internal service, and chanting Hare Krishna is meant to be that. When the Diksha mantras are aligned with that, one is chanting Harinam with the aspirational desire to serve Radha and Krishna in the mood similar to the mood of my Gurudev whom I'm following. This is why we sing the Guru Ashtakam prayer, and in the Guru Ashtakam prayer that has come in our line, Ni kunja yuno rati keli siddha yadalibhir yuktir apekshaniyai. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur Pad, his Gurudev was Sri Radharaman Chakravarti, and he wrote this Ashtakam glorifying his Gurudev in his Siddha Roop, means his Braj Roop, as being Ni kunja yuno rati keli siddha. A Siddha in Nikunja Seva. Nikunja Seva means the place where the Manjari serve Radha and Krishna at various times of the day. So he declared, my Gurudev is this person. I'm following that Gurudev. This is called doing Anugatya, or taking shelter of Gurudev. Right? Because Gurudev is giving Tajma Krishna Dikshari Shiksha. The Guru is giving Siksha in Bhajan to serve Radha and Krishna. What Bhajan Siksha will the Guru give except that which he himself or she has some realization of? Because it is not an accident, it is not random that a disciple comes to a particular Guru. No more than karma is random. Karma is very exacting. I quoted the verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, Karma na Dayan na Trina, Jantra Devapatye, Street Uttarpaveshta, Pumsam Leta Kanasaya. What womb you're born into is very exacting. Don't think that spiritual life and spiritual impressions are random. It's explained. Our bhakti vasans are very direct, whom we've come in contact with in terms of Sadguru. That is a particular indication of previous bhakti sanskars. So now doing anugatya to that Guru, singing Guru Ashtakam in the morning, then my aspirational desire, yes, I want to serve like my Gurudev served, like his Gurudev or her Gurudev served, like their Gurudev served. And then when you examine our parampara, you see that the predominant mood is of a certain particular mood of service. You understand? So predominantly in our line is Manjari Bhav, but also Sakya Rasa is there in our line. So, and also, even in other Vaishnav lines, there's Vatsalya Rasa, like this. So it's not that it's only exclusive Manjari Bhav, but predominantly in this line it is Manjari Bhav. So now I'll have the aspirational desire, and therefore I will nourish it, just as Mahaprabhu told, Malikana Se Bija Ropan, take the seed of bhakti, which is given at the time of Diksha, plant that seed in your heart. Malikana Se Bija Ropan, Shravanam Kirtane Jale Kori Eshekan, and water it by Shravan Kirtan, by hearing and chanting. So, if you have a garden and you planted a seed, you want to have sunshine and water to make it grow. But you're very conscientious about what kind of water. You would not take contaminated water and use it to nourish your seedling and your plant. You want fresh, pure water. So here, hearing and chanting means hearing that which is purely related to the growth of your particular aspiration. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he's saying, Paryadashi Kori Lalita Shundari Amreloyo Kabe. So he's singing, I want to be Paryadasya of Radhika. When will that day come, when being in the association of all others, then I'll receive the order from Lalita, how to do service. And from Sri Rup Manjari, I'll receive Siksha in that particular kind of seva. You understand? When will I take up residence on the bank of Radha Kund, very happily absorbed in bhajan? Taking the instructions of Sri Rupa Goswami in my Sadak Avas, means my life as a practitioner, and aspiring for the service. Sri Rupa Manjari Pada Shai Mora Sampada. When will my sampad be the service of Sri Rup Manjari under my Guru Rupa Sakhi in Braj? This is how you do bhajan life. And when you do bhajan life like this, the practice comes alive and it loses its ideal, or loses not its ideal, but rather its lack of ideal and just becoming a ritual. You have to have some sambandha gyan. Then the practice is a dynamic love relationship with the sadhaka, with his Guru Dev, with his Guru Parampara, with Sriman Mahaprabhu, and ultimately with Sri Radhakrishna Yugal and Braj. Especially books like Manasiksha, Srila Raghunath Das Goswami are very informative about this internal practice. 2 lines came down from Mahaprabhu. One is called the Antarapant, internal path, and one is called the Bahirapanta, external path. So in the line of Akeshwara Pandit, Gopal Guru Goswami's disciple Dhyan Chandra Goswami wrote a Padati. It's a methodology book, how to do this internal practice. That book is called the Gaur Govind Achan Smaran Padati. So it is an Achan Padati, like we have our Achana Deepika, how to do our deity worship. So it was a methodology book designed around how to literally practice the methodology of Raganuga Bhakti in particular, because Raganuga Bhakti is the methodology for worshipping Radha and Krishna. It's mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita very clearly. Sakale Jagate Mori Vari Bhakti Braja Bhava Paiti Nai Sakti. Now I've explained many times the idea that Vaidhi Bhakti cannot be used to serve Radha Krishna does not mean that Raganuga Bhakti is void of any kind of vidhi, means any regulations or rules of practice. It has. Shravanam Kirtanandani, Vaidhi Bhakti Sudanti too. Right? That those same regulations that are applicable in Vaidhi Bhakti, they're applicable in the practice of Raganuga Bhakti. Guru Parasraya, the need to chant Harinam, the need to service Thakurji, the need to wake during Mangalarti, etc. Those things are not changed because of the practice of Raganuga Bhakti. The emphasis and meanings are changed. And the goal is nourished by that practice of obtaining Braj. Right? So it's not that there's no rules and regulations of Raganuga Bhakti. But you can't worship Radha and Krishna by this method. The Antarapant was manifest in the writing of Raghunath Das Goswami's book that I mentioned earlier called Manasiksha. So the Antarapant means how to adjust internally to practice Raganuga Bhakti. And he gives outlines, Guru Goste Gostalishu, Sujane Bu Sugane, Somantrusi Namni, etc. He gives the methodology how to adjust internally. So it's called Manasiksha, how to adjust the mind in order to internally practice the mood of your aspirational desire in the form of Raganuga Bhakti. So reading such books as Manasiksha and also Upadeshamrita of Srila Rupa Goswami Pad, how to bring your senses under control, how to serve as Vaishnavas, then ultimately the glory of Radhakund Seva, meaning Radhika Seva, all is there in the Upadeshamrita or Nectar of Instruction of Rupa Goswami Pad. Reading these books, Ragvatma Chandrika of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur Pad, all these books are nourishing to developing practice that does not then come across as ritualistic, but comes across as a living, dynamic, loving experience of growing in your aspiration to serve and love Sriman Mahaprabhu and Radha Krishna. There are a couple of other questions. I'll go ahead and try to go through them, because I'm not sure how many of these I'll actually do, because I've been quite busy actually. So this is a little off of that topic. It's a different devotee asking the question. He's asking, how come there's sectarianism in Bhakti society? And a follow-up question that he had, I'll say them both together, is why, if this philosophy is the highest, so many issues happen in the society? So, of course, the first thing is you should look at the society according to what Srila Prabhupada established, because he's asking about the ISKCON society. So, one is that Srila Prabhupada's established society for the practice of bhakti is faultless. The collective of individuals who are practicing in a huge institutional environment may be fraught with many, many issues. Because you always have to remember, we are individuals practicing in a collective. So the social ideals of the established society of Srila Prabhupada is perfect, and it in fact has the highest philosophical, theological presentation of loving and serving God. The myriad of practitioners who've come to that institution in an attempt and aspiration to realize this is very diverse and has many diverse karmic iterations going on. So as a result of that, many different issues arise within that material paradigm of people who are practicing in the society. So there's not an imperfection in the society, there's an imperfection in the myriad of aspirants who are trying to come onto the path, and they're practicing in a collective. So sometimes things within one person's karmic portfolio spills over into the social environment, that becomes magnified, and we look, oh, I thought Krishna consciousness was perfect. Krishna consciousness is perfect, the aspirant is not. So that's a very simple answer to those questions. Why there's sectarianism? Sectarianism is a part of social immaturity on behalf of practitioners. Has nothing to do with the actual standard of the institutions established by any of our acharyas. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur established the Gaudiya Math. In the course of time after the Samadhi of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, by Sriman Mahaprabhu's arrangement, many stalwart, high class of pure devotees gained the impetus and freedom to expand the preaching. Because for the most part, very high class devotees are also very humble. So they tend to not seek out name, fame. They tend not to seek out even personal expression. They're very happy to work in a collective for the greater mission. But it was Mahaprabhu's desire that many stalwart disciples of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, many sane pati bhaktas, meaning generals in the army of Mahaprabhu, were among those sannyasis and disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So Lord Chaitanya himself made arrangement that the institution would release them in the form of some social dynamic or social event, etc. So every institution will have some sort of situation in which it illuminates those who are more deeply steeped in the teachings and principles that the acharya has given, and it will reflect those who are in the aspirational stage, and it will reflect those whose bhakti samskars are not very mature at all, and they're struggling very much with their material samskars, but they've been allowed to come into the social environment of all of the practitioners. You understand? So those persons in their immaturity, some sectarian mood may arise. This is called prakrita bhaktas. It's mentioned there. Natat bhakteshu chanyeshu sa bhakta prakrita smritaha. Even they may be initiated, right? Acharya mevaharaye pujam shradaleyate. They may be worshipping the deity with some faith. But natat bhakteshu, they can't understand what is a bhakta. They have not come to the true level of sadhu sangha. So though they're worshipping the deity with faith, they've not really acquired a deep mood of sadhu sangha. And therefore their bhakti is still is called prakrita bhakti, means it's still within the domain of the 81 different varieties of the modes of material nature. Srila Prabhupada in the purport in the second canto told that the practice of bhakti is of 9 types, obviously Shravan, Kirtan, Vishnu Smarana, etc. And the modes of nature are sattva, rajas, and tamas, but they're never stable, so they're always interacting. So those 3 modes of material nature, by combination of their interactions, becomes 3 times 3 is 9, and then the 9 processes of bhakti, so 9 times 9 is 81 different varieties of material expressions of bhakti. You understand? So among them, you get things like sectarianism. But the Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Prabhuji's putting in the chat here, which is true in his Krishna Samhita, he says that this is the greatest enemy in the practice of bhakti. It's been compared to the forest fire that was put out by Krishna, because it's the greatest enemy among the Vaishnava community is a sense of sectarianism. And there really is no philosophical, though devotees have tried many times to come up with some philosophical ideas of good fences make good neighbors and other things, but we don't find any of that quoted in Shastra. Sadhu Sangha of a high class makes good neighbors. By having high class Sadhu Sangha and by having the social environment permeated by high class of Hari Katha and high class of examples of bhakti, that's what makes the best kind of social dynamic between any particular group of societies that are practicing to expand the mission of Mahaprabhu. There's no way in the world to claim that Srila Prabhupada built a house in which the whole world could live, but except other Vaishnavas, there's just no way, or vice versa. In Gaudiya, and also there's no such thing as ISKCON and Gaudiya Math separately. Gaudiya Math is the institution of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Sri Chaitanya Mission, Sri Saraswat Math, International Society of Krishna Consciousness. These are all expansions of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's mission, which was the mission of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the mission of our Guru Vargas, and ultimately of Mahaprabhu, right? That is the wondrous manifestation of Mahaprabhu's prophecy by our Srila Prabhupada. So it's not a separate thing, it is a expansion of the heart of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So there's not one Gaudiya Math and then ISKCON and then there's some conflict between the two. That's not like that. The Gaudiya Math actually was the establishment of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and there are many branches of disciples who are serving Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And one of the practices that is mentioned in the first verse, as I mentioned in the book Manasiksha, Guru Goshte Goshtale se Sujane Bur Surgane. We should always have a mood. Sujan means other Vaishnavas. It means even Sri Sampradaya, Madhav Sampradaya. What to speak of our own Gaudiya Sampradayas. You understand? That if you don't have this, how can you practice bhakti? Raghunath Das Goswami is saying you have to have this. Bur Surgane, respect towards Brahmins. Like this. All right, last question. What is the best way to advance in bhakti? I know it is said, just follow the process, but I see some devotees seem really advanced and some, even though they're older devotees, do not seem so. Of course, one thing is always to be mindful that we should be more concentrated on our own advancement in bhakti. There's no harm to try to understand the nature of a devotee to see if that devotee is suitable advanced association, because Rupa Goswami is told Swajatya Shnigda She Sadhu Sangha Swatovore. We should try to have Sangha with those who are Swajatya, means who have the same aspirational mood we do or can help us develop our mood, and who are Shnigda, who are very affectionate towards us, right? And Mahatra, who are more advanced. So who is both Tattvavid, Rasik, who is steady in their practice of bhakti, who has some realization, we should try to have their association. Right? Especially because also among the 64 angas of bhakti it says, Srimad Bhagavad Artadam Rasika Shahat. We should try to understand Bhagavat from those who are Rasik. The Falstuti of Vyasadeva was Aho Muhur Rasika Bhuvi Bhavukaha. That Rasik Bhavuk Vaishnavas would roam the earth and they would teach this Nigama Kalpataro Galitam Phalam, this mature fruit of Vedic teachings. So he himself is mentioning whom you should hear Bhagavatam from. Rasika Bhavuk Vaishnavas. So sometimes there was some pushback against that. No, what is this Rasik this, Rasik that, this Sahajavad, this, that. No, this is the teaching of Rupa Goswami Pad, it's the teachings of Vyasadeva himself in Srimad Bhagavatam. What does it mean to be Rasik? Then you should study what is Ras, Yatati Bhavana Vatma, Yas Chamatkara Bharabo. You should study these things, and you should be with Vaishnavas who know these things. We should be, according to a Vaishnav's adhikar, we should have dealings. It's mentioned in Upadeshamrita clearly. Right? In the 5th verse, I believe it is, how to deal with different Vaishnavas according to Adhikar. But also don't try to be the judge. Right? Because if you yourself are not very advanced, then don't try to make a judgment on who's this kind of Vaishnava. Hear Harikatha. Do your own Southern Bhajan seriously. And the realizations will come in your heart. You understand? This is the meaning of Bhavanti Rit, Karanasanaya Katha. Hearing Harikatha, Bhavanti Rit. Illumination comes in the heart via the inspiration of the Prabhav of Sarup Shakti. Then you can see who's advanced Vaishnav, what Vaishnavas are trying to advance, what Vaishnavas are more new in their impressions in Bhakti, etc. But don't try to make any external judgments on these things. And also don't lose track of your own status. Check your own pulse. My Guru Dev say, check your own pulse. Bhakti Pareshanu Bhavo. See where your own practice in Bhakti is going at this point. And following sincerely, being very humble, and hearing Harikatha, then naturally, Antaryami and your Bhakti impressions will guide you into the association of Rasik Bhavuk Tattvavid Vaishnavas. Like this. Alright, I think that we will conclude here. My Dandavat Pranam to all devotees. Anche Kalpatarubhishcha Kripashindavevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Radhe Radhe.